So now that we've converted over our header component, let's tackle something more challenging, because all we've done with this header component and the homepage component is convert some pretty basic CSS over into a style component. But what about using the props that we were talking about? Well, one of our biggest components that actually does that is our custom button component. By using CSS and these props that we get in to custom button, we actually have three possible states, right? Three possible CSS styles that we might apply on our button. But this is actually pretty much exactly what styled components is meant to do. What we're trying to do here with class names, we can actually easily do with style components. Now, how do we do this? Well, let's make a new file called custombutton.styles.jsx. And inside, we want to import in styled, and we also want CSS from style components. And we want CSS because we will be pretty much modifying the base component, right? We're not going to conditionally render different components. We just want our style component to have different styles in it, and we can easily do that with a CSS block. So instead of conditionally rendering class names, we can conditionally render CSS blocks related to what the styles are nested in those class names. So if we open up our style sheet as well, we see that these styles are related to our custom button. These styles are related to the Google sign-in, and these styles are related to the inverted, right? So what we can do is we can separate these three chunks into their own styles or style component. So what we'll do first is we will create our base style, which is our base component, which would be our custom button container, which is equal to a styled button. And in the style button, we are going to just put all of these styles that we know that we want. And the great thing is that it just supports pretty much the exact same syntax as we wrote with our Sass, right? Is we get all the benefits of Sass, but we also get the benefits of JavaScript. Now, what we want to do is we also want to create the separate styles that we had for our Google sign-in and our inverted button style. What we want to do is we can make a new const called inverted button styles, which is equal to a CSS block that holds the code to our inverted button styles. So we'll just copy this over. We also need our Google sign-in styles, which is also equal to a CSS block. And we're just going to copy over our Google sign-in styles. And now what we need to do is, instead of rendering just these styles in, well, we know that we can write JavaScript, right? So what we can actually write is a function that we call inside of this component, because it's just all JavaScript. So what we can write is const get button styles is equal to a function that gets the props, and what it returns is different styles depending on what we have. So we can say if props.Google sign-in, which is the same props that we had from here, right? We'll still just pass them in. Then I want to return Google sign-in styles out of this function. So I want to return these styles if the Google sign-in prop is true. Otherwise, what we want to return if is props.inverted. If this is true, then return inverted button styles. Otherwise, what we want to return is nothing, or our base styles. So what we can actually do, in fact, is we can even make this a step further because now we can leverage this, what we will move out is the styles that are conflicting with our inverted button styles. So we can say const button styles is equal to the CSS of our regular background, right? When our background is black. So let's just pull that off. We know that when our background is black and our color is white, we know when the color is white, actually the color white is also in our Google Styles, but that's okay. We'll copy over our color is white. And then we also want when our border is none. And then on the hover, we also want our hover. Now what we'll do is, if we don't return inverted button styles, we'll just return button styles. So what we did is we pretty much wrote this function that checks first if you have Google sign-in. If it's Google sign-in, we know it's never going to be inverted, right? So then we never want to hit this part where we can return any of these styles. We want to return our Google sign-in style. And then if this is not true, if Google sign-in is false, then we check if it's inverted. If it's inverted, then we return the inverted button styles. If it's not inverted, then we return the regular button styles. And then in order to use this, we just call this inside of our component like so. And just like that, instead of writing all of that nested, ugly looking ternary operators for our class names, we can just now import in our button. And now we don't even need to spread in all of these other props like so. We can just spread in all of our props, right? Because our class name, or sorry, not our class name, instead of doing it like this, we don't even need to destructure anything anymore because we don't need that kind of specificity. Because we're not doing it in this file, we can now just spread in our props. We do need to destructure off the children though. So let's do this. There we go. Just like that, we've reduced the amount of complexity and what we see here. And now if we want to know what styles get loaded, we can tell because, we can just look at this function, right? We see that we have some base styles on this button. And then what other styles get rendered is depending on what props we got passed in. And it's very easy to see what we'll get, because each piece of code is now inside of its own section, and it just reads like JavaScript. But except we know that we're getting CSS styling. And now if we look, we'll see all our buttons still work the same way that they did before. Oh, I think I might have misspelled our Google sign-in. Just check where we're using it. This is in our sign-in folder. Oh, is Google sign-in. Whoops, my bad. Not Google. And now if we save, right, we see everything still works the same as it did. So hopefully you see the benefits of using style components does already, right? It's just more JavaScript. It's just easier to write JavaScript, but it's not like we're giving up our understanding of CSS. All we're doing is just writing the JavaScript and following the JavaScript rules that we're already so used to. So now let's just remove this custom styles because we don't need it anymore. So hopefully you're familiar with what it is to move over some of our style sheets over to our CSS and JS style components. At this point, what you can do is you have all of these other components that you can convert over to style components. If you find that you're hitting a challenging area, I have included a link to the complete version where every component that we've ever written is switched over to a style component. So you can just use and leverage that if you would prefer. Otherwise, in the next few lessons, we're going to move on from style components because the concepts are pretty much just the same as what you've seen here. Now, one of the things to consider is definitely that you don't have to convert all of these components at once. If you want to break from some of the future lessons, right? If you feel like something is overwhelming, it's actually kind of therapeutic to convert styles over to style components. And the more practice you get, the better it'll be. I do think one last thing we have to do is remove our reference to the styles.sass inside of our custom button component. But going back to my original point, there's many ways, right? And there's many ways you can learn. You don't have to just copy everything over, right? You don't have to force yourself until you hit a wall before you check the final repo where everything is converted over to a style component. You can definitely just use it as a reference if you even want to just look at what you have, look at the final version, right? Compare and even just copy it over. Okay, now let's continue with our course.